My next point is this. Jezebel is a transgender spirit that castrates men. 2 Kings 9:22 speaks of the whorings and sorceries of Jezebel. Spiritual and sexual, they always go together. 2 Kings 9:30. Now, I read this, and I was on vacation. Wasn't much of a vacation. And you read the Bible all the time, your whole life, and then you're like, wait, I missed that. I learn something new every day. Read it slow. When Jehu, he's coming to kill Jezebel. When he came to Jezebel, she made sure to get her makeup done. Because she's about seduction. She's going to look her best, and maybe she can get Jehu in bed. These gals love pastors and leaders. When Jehu came to Jezebel, she painted her eyes and adorned her head, and she was surrounded by her what? Let's talk about that since you read that Bible verse with me. Her eunuchs. When they go to arrest and kill Jezebel, all the men around her are castrated. They're castrated. To serve the Jezebel spirit as a man means you need to be castrated. Today we call this gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is, I have a body, but my mind doesn't feel congruent with my body. So, I don't know if you know this, I'm a male. Okay? I don't know if you know that. And so, now let's say in my mind, I was a female. And I would say, I'm a female trapped in a man's body. That means there is incongruence between my mind and my body. So one of two things need to change, my mind or my body. The Bible talks a lot about transforming your mind, renewing your mind. And Satan comes along and says, actually, we need to change your body. Let me take a deep breath. So I've never read this anywhere. I've never heard this anywhere. I'll tell you, and you tell me if it's true. So we are made, according to the Bible, in the image and likeness of God, male and female, binary gender categories, two gender categories, male and female. True? Yes. True? Okay. Now in addition to human beings, there are divine beings. Human beings have a body, so we have a gender, male and female. Divine beings do not have a body, so they are not engendered. They are transgender. In the unseen realm of the divine beings, there are angels and demons. Angels and demons in the Bible, true or false, when they do appear, sometimes they appear male, sometimes they appear female. True or false? If you know the Bible, it's true. So spirits are non-binary. They're transgender. They live on a spectrum. True or false? In the Bible, angels never show up to have sexual relations. Holy angels never show up to have sexual relations with human beings. True or false? True. Demons often show up to be involved in sexual relations between human beings. True or false? True. So God made us in his image and likeness, and demons want us to remake ourselves in their image and likeness. To become non-binary, transgender, on a spectrum, which means we must castrate the men. We see this interaction between human beings and unholy divine beings in Genesis 6. It says that the sons of God, that's language from Job chapter 38, for divine beings, they sought to mate with the daughters of men, those are human beings, to create a super race that would be a counterfeit of the incarnation of Jesus Christ, spiritual father, but a physical mother. Everything God creates, Satan counterfeits. So let me go deeper. So I was sitting on my vacation, and I'd never heard this or read this my whole life, that the demonic realm is transgender, non-binary, on a spectrum, and that men who are going to serve the Jezebel spirit have to be castrated and become defiant of their God-assigned gender and sex. In the ancient world, there was a cult, a religion that worshiped a female deity named Cybele. I believe behind it was Jezebel. In various cultures, the worship of a female deity is also called the Anatolian mother goddess, Kybele, Agdesis, Rhea, Meter Theon, and Magna Mater. Now, here's what's interesting. In the history of the world, and I'll read it from a non-Christian textbook in a moment, wherever the worship of a female deity spread, the high priests and those who worshiped her were men who had to be castrated, transgender, wear women's clothes, makeup, and hair, and go out in public singing and dancing for all ages shows as drag queens. New days, old demons. Some within the trans community will admit this, and they will say that Cybele is, quote unquote, the trans god. The same spirit may have been at work in the New Testament days of Paul. Just rabbit trail. Galatians, Paul's arguing with them, and he says early on in the book, who has bewitched you? Meaning there's a demonic spirit of confusion over the church. And then in chapter 5, verse 12, he says, why don't you men go all the way and castrate yourselves? He's saying the way you're thinking is Jezebelian. Julius Firmicus Maternus. He was a Roman Latin writer who became a Christian apologist during the reign of Constantine. He speaks of the galley priests of Cybele and Attis in the mid-4th century AD. Here's what he says, okay? 4th century. Let me quote the Christian scholar. Of those priests who served female deities, they wear effeminately nursed hair and dress in soft clothes. They can barely hold their heads up by their limp necks. Then, having made themselves alien to masculinity, swept up by playing flutes, they call on their goddess to fill them with an unholy spirit. Augustine, the church father, says this, with dripping hair and painted faces, with flowing limbs and feminine walk, they passed through the streets and alleys of Carthage, exacting from merchants that by which they might shamefully live. Augustine says, one of our biggest problems, we have a bunch of Ahab men who are dressing up like women, feeling as victims, expecting to be compensated so they don't have to go to work. He was a Democrat. Now, okay. Now let me read a historical textbook, The History of Religions. One of the greatest threats to Christianity in the 1st century is one of the greatest threats to Christianity in this century. Transgender, sexuality, without any God-given restrictions. I'll read it to you. So then I started digging, and I found The History of Religions. It's this textbook on religions. It's not a Christian book. Here's what it reports. Competition between Christian and pagan in the ancient world is a battle between believers and transgender priests. That's the backdrop. Here's the quote. These infamous men, with their impure, unchaste, polluted bodies, were none other than the Galli, the priests of the gods Cybele and Attis, whose mystery religion constituted one of early Christianity's major rivals. Time and time again, Christian apologists cited the Galli as representative of all they abhorred in pagan culture and religion, and of all the outrages of the Galli, none horrified them more than the radical manner in which they transgressed the boundaries of gender. The History of Religions textbook goes on to say, there's this very unique phenomenon in world history. Wherever there is the worship of a female god, goddess, the men are all castrated and transgender who serve as their high priests and worshipers. They dress up with makeup and they go out in public, and the description is exactly a drag show. Now, what's interesting, the History of Religion says We see this phenomena globally and historically. We see it in India and Pakistan and Rome. We see it in different religions, in different regions, in different languages and nations and cultures. And then this is where I literally just had a mind melt. They said and summarized, what's so interesting is we see this same phenomena. Worship the goddess, castrate the men in all these religions and cultures and regions and languages, and we have no way to explain it because they didn't ever intersect and there's no point of connection. How could you have the same thing happening in all these places? And literally, they came to the conclusion, we don't have an explanation. Yeah, we do. New days, same demons. The same spirits that were at work in the Old Testament and the days of Rome continue their work to this very day. So I'll give you an example of what this looks like. The United Methodist Church on the right has got Mrs. Pentecost. This is a drag queen who is finishing their ordination to become licensed clergy. And their ministry is, quote unquote, ministry, is to go into United Methodist churches and to go up on the stage where the Bible should be taught and to do sermons for children. That's a denomination that's an abomination. Won't even say what that person says, not sure what the pronoun is, but what they've said about the Bible. So let me say this. You're very uncomfortable, but it's true. You're very troubled because now you're starting to see. You're going to want to attack me, but I'm not the issue.
Howdy, Pastor Mark here. Thanks for viewing the clip. And if you'd like the entire sermon, we've got it ready to go.